Hello, welcome to the Law of Attraction Tribe podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Keith. So, we are in mid January already, which is so wild. And, I feel like this is the point where we start to like fall off from our New Year's resolutions. And it doesn't help that it is, like the cold and flu season. I just got super sick. Our whole family got this illness. I think it was the flu. I'm not really sure, but it was bad. It was so bad. I couldn't get out of bed. It was like where you have the chills and body aches, and it was just awful. And I feel like when things like that happen and we have to slow down or we just don't have a lot of energy because coming out of that, even though like I'm feeling better now, I still my energy feels drained. Like it just knocked me out. And we are so conditioned to tell ourselves and to think that when we're resting, when we're slowing down, that we're lazy and we're unmotivated or we're falling behind or we're not doing enough. And we beat ourselves up because we have literally been programmed to overthink everything and to believe that hard work equals success. And therefore, if we rest, if we slow down, everything's going to fall apart, or we're not going to manifest, or we're not going to see success. And we can tend to like get in this spiral and have a lot of negative self-talk and just tell ourselves that we're not doing enough. And we try to switch on this motivation. And what I've come to realize and what I've really been diving into during this period where I'm resting and trying to take it easy is that we have it all backwards. We really hurt ourselves and we limit ourselves, and we are blocking our manifestations by doing this, by thinking that we have to think about it more. We have to do more. We have to take more action. We have to be more logical focused. And instead, what I have been trying to do in the month of January, as I've been feeling this, is to just look at the way that I've been feeling and tell myself maybe this is an invitation to slow down enough to where I create enough space so I can tap in to something outside of my logical mind, which is far more intelligent than the logical mind. And it's where miracles happen, it's where manifestation happens, it's where your intuition lives. And so that's what I've been doing. And it's led me to two books that I've been reading this past week that are so good. I'm recommending them left and right to everyone that I come across because I just feel like if we can understand this concept, it changes everything. Everything we've been conditioned to believe about how the world works and how success works, it just flips it upside down. So, the first book that I want to talk about is An End to Upside Down Thinking by Mark Gober. Now, this book, just to give you a heads up, it's more like scientific focused. So, it's not necessarily like as fun of a read as some other, like manifestation type books. But what he does is he takes all of this scientific knowledge that has been going on for over 100 years around consciousness and spiritual gifts and psychic abilities and all of these different things. And he puts it in layman's terms. So it's just super easy to digest and to understand. And he makes a great case for why everything that we've been taught, like, for example, everything we've been taught in science class, like our entire education, is upside down and really doesn't make sense when you look at all of this other body of knowledge and evidence and studies around things that have to do with consciousness and when you get into quantum mechanics. And so it's just the way he words everything is phenomenal and it makes you rethink literally everything. So, the main point that he's trying to make in the book is that consciousness is not created in the brain, which for a very long time, that was the standing belief that we're as conscious beings, like that consciousness is in our brain, so that when you die and your brain stops working, like that's it, lights out. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. I don't think a lot of people realize if you believe that this standing theory that mainstream science tells you, that would mean there's no afterlife. It would pretty much like cancel out every religion that's out there. It would mean that we don't have a soul. We don't have this, extension outside of our human biological bodies. And this is the standing thing. This is what mainstream science still believes. And he just pretty much obliterates that idea using evidence, scientific evidence that is out there, and there is so much of it. And instead, what he's saying is that our brains are like antennas. They're like receivers. Okay, so they're receiving consciousness. Consciousness is non-local. It's outside of the human body, but our brains are receiving it. Just like a TV is going to receive the signal for the TV show, or a radio is going to receive the frequency for the different radio stations. So it's like this receiver, but it's also a filter. So it filters consciousness in a way that makes it possible for us to live and survive as human beings. And so, an example that really stuck with me in the book that he uses is he says, imagine a TV that's broken. Okay, because right now, what mainstream science says is that when your brain is broken, you either like when you're dying and your brain is no longer functioning, then that's it. Like your consciousness goes out with your brain. What he's saying is like, imagine your TV is broken. Okay. The TV's broken, but you wouldn't say the show that you're about to watch is broken. That show is still functioning perfectly on TVs and phones and everything else across the world because it's not the TV show does not live and it wasn't created inside the TV. It was created and it lives outside of the TV. The TV is just receiving it. So that's the example that he uses. Like consciousness is coming in through our brain, our receiver, but it doesn't live in our brain. It is outside of us. And I just felt like that was a really good analogy to understand how the brain is functioning with relation to consciousness. Okay, so once you understand that concept, he gets into why the less that our brain is involved, the more we tap into consciousness. And this is where the bulk of the book goes. It goes into studies that I didn't even know have been going on. And the reason I didn't know they were going on is because most mainstream scientific journals won't even look at them. Most mainstream scientists won't even look at the data. They immediately dismiss it because if you believe that this is true, that consciousness evolves and comes outside of the brain, it is not a product of the brain, then everything that we think we know and all the scientific theories we've been taught up until this point are like null and void. They would make no sense. And so the scientific community is like not willing to look at it. And this is a pattern we have seen throughout history. You think about like Galileo, who was imprisoned for daring to say that the sun is not revolving around the earth and the earth is not the center of the universe. It's happened. He used the example of germs and how mainstream science used to laugh at people that said, yeah, these microscopic things called germs are causing you to be sick. They thought that that was hilarious and just ridiculous. And so this is something that has played out throughout history with science. And it's happening again where they just don't want to look at this body of evidence, which is massive and a lot of times is more statistically significant than like mainstream studies. And so basically, what these studies are showing is that the less your brain is involved, the more you're tapping into this expansive ocean of consciousness. Okay. So there's like this consciousness that we are all connected to. And you have near death experiences that are a great documented example of this. Okay. So one of my favorite stories with near death experiences is Dr. Eben Alexandra. And he was a brain surgeon that very much believed that consciousness comes from the brain. And when you die, that's it, lights out. Well, he ended up having his own near death experience where he traveled outside of his body and went to this other place that was more real than here. It felt more real than our, quote unquote reality. And he ended up surviving, being brought back to life. And once he was recovering, he was looking at his brain scans because he's a brain surgeon. And he was like, this makes no sense because while I was experiencing this, it was showing there was nothing happening in my brain. Like I was brain dead, but I was having these vivid, more real than real experiences that were so detailed. And this just isn't possible because nothing is showing up on the brain scans that would indicate that I was dreaming or hallucinating or anything like that. So he's now become a big advocate for bringing this into the scientific community and talking about how there's just no way that that was possible if consciousness is in fact a product of the brain. There was, when I was a kid, there was a little boy in my neighborhood who had drowned in his pool. And it was such a like traumatic thing, like I remember to this day, like hearing his mom screaming and the ambulance coming and my brother and my neighbor went over and were trying to resuscitate him. And so from the time, he was in the pool to the time they like got him to the hospital, I don't remember now like how many minutes the mom said it was, but based on what we know from, doctors and science, enough time had elapsed that it was impossible for him, number one, to be brought back to life because he was out for too many minutes. And number two, like if they could get him, his heart beating again, he would be brain dead because he was out for so long. And none of that happened. He was revived and no brain damage at all. Like he lives a normal life and is fine, which is scientifically impossible according to what we know or think we know. Yet here he is, like a perfect case of it doesn't make sense that he would be alive and well and his brain would be functioning normally. And I remember years after that happened, I was talking with his mom and she was telling me how he had told her that like, he went somewhere when he died and he had one of these vivid experiences. And so things like that, like there's multiple of those. There's so many of those experiences that just can't be explained. And, it's like you almost have to just ignore it and not look at it in order to keep believing this mainstream materialism model that we've had for so long. So the other part of this is the less your logical brain is involved, the more you can tap in to spiritual gifts. So like psychic abilities, telepathy, remote viewing. Which again, like you hear these things and you may think, oh yeah, I believe in that, or I don't believe in that. But what you probably don't know, and what I didn't realize, is just how much research and studies have been done on all of these things, including our government, our CIA, that actually uses this and has put a lot of money towards it. So all of these things have been studied and have been seen as statistically significant. But what this book is talking about is the link to that is being able to turn off that logical brain. So this is why, for example, in the telepathy tapes, I've talked about that before on the podcast. It's the Telepathy Tapes podcast. If you haven't listened to it, go listen to it. It's pretty remarkable. But she follows and interviews all of these children who are nonverbal autistic children, and they have telepathy. And so, what he's saying is a lot of times in different people that have had brain damage or for whatever reason, certain areas of their brain aren't functioning properly. It's like the logical part of the brain that either shuts down or is just not used as much. And so they can focus on and they can receive more consciousness. So if you think of like your brain as a receiver and a filter of consciousness, and that filter starts to go out for whatever reason. It could be you're born, with some type of a damage to the brain or a certain area of the brain isn't functioning properly. It could be you were in a serious accident of some sort. There's a bunch of cases of that in the book. Um, or it could be that you have the ability through meditation and different techniques to kind of shut off that logical side of the brain and pick up on the spiritual aspect. And so in all of those cases, the filter kind of like is gone or it's limited. And so more of this consciousness you're able to receive. This is kind of the idea of the book, and what he talks about. And on the telepathy tapes, so there's a season 2 that I've started listening to, and there's an episode where they talk about remote viewing. And she interviews these 2 girls that are sisters that have remote viewed their entire life. And they're like extremely accurate to the point where they've helped find missing people. Like they can see in their mind's eye where the people are and have like worked with law enforcement to find missing people. So anyhow, one of the questions she asked these girls was, as you're getting older, are your spiritual gifts getting stronger or weaker, or is there no change? And what they said was that it's actually gotten weaker. And she said it's because of school, because, they're in school, and in school, you are so conditioned and focused on your logical side of your brain that it's weakening their spiritual gift or the right side of their brain. I guess this filter we can say to consciousness. And it just made me think, it's like we're in school for 13 years at a minimum. And I just think about my own childhood and then seeing my oldest daughter go through school and how you really are conditioned to rely on your logical side of the brain, and you are encouraged to not tap into the creative or intuitive side of your brain. You're not encouraged to trust yourself. You're encouraged to trust the authority in the room or the textbook that you're looking in. You're not encouraged to paint and draw and play and be creative. That at some point it's like, okay, unless it's an elective that you've signed up for, you're not doing that. Your head is in a book and you're memorizing things. And so, you do that for 13 years, you're very conditioned. And then you go into college or the workforce, and that's just reinforced over and over, which is why what I believe and what he says in the book and what any of these scientists that study this will say is that we all have these abilities to some extent. We've just been taught to ignore them, to not look at them, and we're just so conditioned to be with that logical side of the mind all the time. And that you can learn. They actually teach people in the CIA how to remote view and how to tap into these abilities. So it is something that can be learned. I don't know exactly what goes into that. Like, I don't know if anyone can just sit down and like go through this program. I know the Monroe Institute has one, um, or not. I'm sure it's easier or harder for some people just based on your beliefs and your openness and your willingness. But it is possible to start to train yourself to quiet that logical side of the mind so that you can tune in to more of these spiritual gifts. And so, back to what I was saying in the very beginning of this episode, when we are going through these moments where, for whatever reason, we feel like we need to slow down or we need to rest or we're just not motivated. We're not motivated to like think about things and to take a bunch of action. Maybe we can look at that as an invitation and instead of beating ourselves up saying we're lazy, we're not motivated, like things are going to go wrong, we got to get our act together, instead of spiraling, which all of us probably do, I know I do. What if you instead allow yourself to follow that and to just let things flow naturally? Like, give yourself permission to rest, to slow down, to empty your mind of all of these logical thoughts, the logical rat race that's going through our mind 24/7. And by doing that, maybe you do start to tap in to something that is just so incredible, something far bigger than our logical mind can even fathom. And that's literally what is happening right now. Like, I canceled my live calls. I've barely been posting on social media or doing anything other than pretty much resting and slowing down and just kind of letting my mind wander. And it's led me to this path to read these books, and it's opened up like a whole can of worms of all this information that's coming through. And it's the same thing that happened in 2024 where I just felt so burnt out and didn't want to do anything, but I let myself like relax. Like, I literally gave myself permission. I'm like, I'm not booking any calls this year. Like, this is a year of like, I'm just gonna enjoy life and be as present with my kids as possible. And so much information came to me. So many brilliant light bulb ideas. It's where Quantum Catalyst was born. And now I feel like I'm going through Quantum Catalyst 2.0, where I'm just going to be adding so much information into that program because when you let it flow, it flows. The freaking faucet turns on full speed and you get ideas and things that are so easy. It's like you don't have to stress yourself out and work so hard and logically have all the answers. They're literally there. You just have to allow yourself to turn on the faucet. And you turn on the faucet by turning off this logical valve and letting the intuitive side flow. So let's apply this. What I'm talking about here. I have a point to all of this, by the way. If you're like, why is she rambling? I want to apply all of this to manifestation, to bettering your life. Because when you understand like the science behind this and these basic concepts, you start to realize that a lot of things that we thought were woo-woo or bogus, or maybe we believe it, but you got that doubt and uncertainty in the back of your mind, like, does this really work? But when you start to understand what I'm talking about here, it makes sense. It makes more sense than what we were taught growing up in science class. So, number one, applying this to manifestation is you can tap into this infinite river of knowledge. Okay, so that this consciousness, it's everywhere. It's not contained in our brain. We're all connected to it. Everything in the universe is connected to it, meaning it holds all of the answers to everything since the beginning of time and everything that will come ahead. We all can tap into that. It's like tapping into this infinite wisdom that's always been and always will be. So we are a receiver for this vast ocean of consciousness. And if we want to receive more, if we want that faucet to flow faster, better, more efficient, we have to turn off the valve that has all these logical thoughts racing around in our mind. And the other part of that is regulating our emotions because all of our thoughts are tied to emotions, and our emotions and our thoughts combined can really derail us. And so, what neuroscientist Julia Mossbridge says is that the feeling of love really helps tap into gifts. So, with precognition, for example, where you're like predicting a future event, she says the more tapped into love, the more love you're feeling in the moment, the more love you're feeling for other people, the more love you're feeling for the test that you're running or whatever you're doing, the easier that faucet's going to flow. Richard Dotz, huge fan of all of his books. That's the other book I'm going to get to in a second. But he talks about how there's this place that he calls the universal good that is within us all. And the way I think of it is this baseline of just pure love. And we all have it. We're born with it. I mean, look at any baby. They're full of love. And we don't lose that. We always have it, but it can be hidden under layers and layers and layers of conditioning. And when we empty our mind of all the mental crap and we just let ourselves be, you will actually come back to that baseline of love, or what he calls the universal good. And so Julia Mossbridge says, like, this is key for tapping into these spiritual abilities, for expanding your consciousness. The more you can sit in this feeling of love and radiate love, the more you're connected to this ocean of consciousness, and the more you can tap into things. So connecting with love is like the first part of it. The second part is quieting the mind. And that's the hard part. This is why most people are like, I can't meditate, because it's impossible to just shut off your thoughts. It takes a lot of practice. But Richard Dotz, one of the examples that he gives that's so helpful is like, as your mind is racing and you're trying to empty the mental clutter, ask yourself this question. Just say, am I aware? Am I aware? And what it does is it kind of gets you to stop and connect with your higher self. Your higher self, think of it as like, this is your soul. This is the person kind of running the show that's just observing things. And it's letting you in your human life have all these wild thoughts and feelings. And it's just this observer that's just kind of watching things and guiding you. And so when you ask, am I aware? It helps to like turn on, like, okay, there's this awareness, something outside of me, Stephanie, and this body. There is this awareness, and it helps you connect to that. That's one that he mentioned. A friend of mine said that you ask the question, like, what is my next thought going to be? Because you can't, like, you don't know, right? And so it gets you to kind of like quiet your mind and quiet the thoughts. So there's different little techniques to quiet the mind. What I can say for sure is the more you practice it, the easier it becomes. And for me, what I've noticed is if you get outside, it's easier. So if I'm sitting inside my house right now and I'm trying to meditate, it's not easy for me. Still to this day, it's not easy. And there's distractions, there's little noises in the house. And It's just not easy. But if I go outside and go for a walk or go barefoot in the grass, I can connect like instantly. Like it's so much easier. And all of the noises help me connect. Like the birds chirping, for example, literally calms your nervous system. The trees are giving off ions. Like there's this whole energetic exchange with nature. And so, what I always tell people is if it's hard to meditate or to quiet, I don't want to call it meditating because there's so many like beliefs, limiting beliefs around like I can't meditate. If you want to quiet your mind and turn on the faucet, step outside. It is the easiest way, in my opinion, to get there. And practice helps. So, the other thing that I want to mention too, when I'm talking about like connecting with love and how Richard Dott says we all have it within us, it's our baseline. There's something else with those NDEs, near death experiences. If you've ever followed them, you know, but if you have not followed them, go start researching them. It is so phenomenal to hear these. And there have been reports of near death experiences going back thousands of years that have been documented. And they all have the same things in common. One of those things is that they all talk about going to this place where it's pure love. That's just the what you feel. Everything is love. You feel love for everything. And it's exactly what Richard Dotts says is within us all. And when you quiet your mind, you naturally flow there. And it's available. Like you don't have to wait until you're dead to experience it or to get there. It's always there. It's always possible. It's quieting your racing thoughts that help you to naturally get back to this baseline. Okay. So, anyhow, when you do those things, when you quiet your thoughts and you start tapping into this baseline, this universal good, this feeling of love, this is where you can start to tap into spiritual abilities, where maybe it's psychic abilities, maybe it's precognition, where you're predicting a certain, event. Maybe it's remote viewing. And it's not like you just quiet your mind and all of a sudden you have all these abilities. It's like a muscle you have to work out. You have to practice, but it is possible. So for me, what I'm doing is I'm allowing myself to practice this. So when I feel overwhelmed, not motivated, like all I want to do is just sit down and do nothing, I'm going to let myself sit down and do nothing. And I'm going to practice this. I'm going to see, like, can I start tapping into things? What comes through? Because when you're in that state, that meditative type state, you're going to get these light bulb ideas. Every time I go for a walk outside, by the end of my walk, I'm going to have the answer to the question that I had when I started the walk. I'm going to get a light bulb moment. And so I'm just going to allow myself to do that. I feel like it is an invitation. Like we have something you need to know. You need to quiet your mind and slow down so you can receive it. So instead of saying you're lazy or unmotivated, you're slowing down so you can tap into whatever this knowledge is that needs to come through or whatever this gift is that needs to come through. Okay, so that's the first thing. We can use it to expand our consciousness, tap into abilities that we never thought were possible. The second thing is thinking less so you can manifest more. So this brings me to my second book that I want to recommend. It's called Manifest as You Read by Richard Dotts. This book, I read it in one afternoon. It's like a super easy, quick read. And it's basically the same idea, but the way he explains it is just, it's so simple. It's like for me, everything clicked where it's like, we are always overcomplicating things. And by trying to overthink things and trying to take all this logical information and take action, we're getting in our own way. We are blocking our manifestation with our thinking mind, our logical mind, and all the emotions that come with it. So, if we can shut down that thinking mind and shut down, going down the rabbit hole with that and just have an intention and then just let it go, leave it up to the universe to make it happen, we manifest. So, like, we're getting it by trying and by controlling how it has to happen and by thinking we have to take all this action and we have to, like, have it all figured out in our mind. We are actually blocking that manifestation from just flowing. So, if you're having trouble with that, if you're the type of person who you think about what you want to manifest and then you have a million thoughts, well, I need to do this. It's not possible because of this. First, I need to do this. Da, 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 da. Read this book, Manifest as You Read by Richard Dotts. And by the end of the book, like, you're going to have such a solid understanding of why you've been self-sabotaging your manifestations by doing that, by letting your mind go wild. And so back to the whole consciousness thing, once again, if our brains are a receiver and a filter, the more we can quiet the overthinking and the emotions that fog up that filter, the more we can open the faucet to all of this consciousness that has the answer we're looking for and that can manifest miracles quickly. Another thing is when I talk about the logical mind, it's the left hemisphere of the brain. And then the right hemisphere is more tied to like your intuition. And so if you can start to balance those two, it's the masculine energy and the feminine energy. That's really helpful as well. And in the CIA programs, they do that. What they call it hemisync technology. It's binaural beats. It's what's in all of the subliminals that I make. Those binaural beats is where you hear one tone in your right ear, you hear another in your left ear, but your brain processes it as one, and it brings a balance of those two hemispheres and a balance of that energy. So binaural beats are also super, super helpful if you're trying to tap into this. The other thing to keep in mind is a lot of people will say, well, how do I know if my intuition is telling me something or if my logical brain is telling me something? Like, how do I know if it's a fear-based belief from my logical brain versus my intuition warning me of something? And it's very, very simple. Okay, your intuition makes statements. It's very certain. It's like, this, you should get away from this. It is dangerous. Like, it is very much a statement and it is a certainty that you can't explain, but like, fear and logic asks questions. It doesn't make statements, it asks questions. Like, is this the right choice? Can I trust this person? I don't know. It's, like, there is no certainty and it comes in the form of a question. So as you're doing this, and if that comes up and you're wondering, like, well, how do I know that this is my intuition versus my logical mind? Is it a question or a statement? If it's a question, it's coming from your logical mind. If it's a statement, it's coming from your intuition. Okay. And then the third thing is how time is not linear. And we can use this to heal and to manifest. And so something that Mark Gober talks about in the book is if you look at classical physics, it says that time is linear. So cause and effect. Like, if you throw a ball, the ball is going to move and it's going to land somewhere. But quantum physics completely changes everything we think we know about reality because quantum particles don't do this. Quantum particles can literally predict in the future whether or not they'll be measured and how they'll be measured. And we are all made up of quantum particles. And so, back to Julia Mossbridge's study, people were having physical reactions to images that they weren't shown yet. They could predict at some level in their nervous system what photo was going to be shown in the future. So we're all made of these quantum particles that can predict the future. Like that is for certain. That has been proven. Um, and it brings up a lot of questions because if that's true, then the future isn't really the future and the past isn't really the past. Time is an illusion and it's not linear. And maybe this consciousness that's outside of us can see and can weave in and out of the future and the past. And so, what you can do is, first of all, that's another reason to start tapping into your intuition and trusting it because it can see things in the future and guide you. And this is where things get really trippy because another thing you can do is you can go back to the past in your mind. Think of a time where you felt really lost, really hopeless, like things are just not going to get better. You can go back and comfort yourself. And like, this is your future self. This is, going back in time and saying, hey, everything's going to be okay. And that thing that you're worried about, it's not going to matter in 5 years from now. And you've got this, and everything's going to be okay. And in doing that, if you start doing that, like in the past, and you go back and you give assurances to your past self, what's going to end up happening is you're going to get more intuitive hits because your intuition might actually be your future self warning you of things or guiding you. So, example, when I was feeling really like lost and at a fork in the road in my life, um, and out of the blue, I just had this knowing, 100% certainty, this knowing that I would write a book. And at the time, that was the farthest thing from my mind. I didn't even think it was possible for me to write a book. Yet I had this inner knowing come through. And years later, I still to this day think back to that time and just kind of like, it's like I tell my past self, it's like, see, everything worked out and you did write the book and like everything was okay. And like you trusted that feeling and you went with it and it happened. Everything happened for you. So maybe that what was coming through, that intuitive hit that I got that said I was going to write a book, maybe that was me, the future me, the me now going back and letting myself know like, hey, everything's going to be okay. You're actually going to write a book. It's going to be really amazing. And so it's just interesting because the more you do that, the more you're like strengthening that muscle and the more you'll probably start to get these intuitive hits from the future you because you're building this habit where you're going back in the past and like reassuring your past self or healing things that didn't go so well. And so you're building this habit. And so you're more likely to experience more of these intuitive hits as you move forward. So, anyhow, to wrap it all up, I once again recommend these two books. I think that they are life changing. Manifest as You Read by Richard Dotz. Read that whenever you're getting that feeling of like, I am lazy, I'm not motivated, you feel drained, you want to slow down, but like your mind is telling you you can't slow down. Read that book. And then The End to Upside Down Thinking by Mark Gober. It will blow your mind and it will give you so much scientific evidence that just leaves me feeling so hopeful. Like we live in a magical world, and what we think we know is so like not even true. And there's so much more potential out there, so much more that we can tap into. And maybe it's our beliefs and these thoughts that we've been conditioned to believe. Maybe that's what's standing in the way between us and between miracles and between us and spiritual abilities. And I think once you have that understanding, it opens up a world of possibility that is so exciting. And again, I feel so hopeful and hopeful for where we're headed in the future and where the scientific world is going. So, anyhow, I hope you're having a good month. And hopefully, if you were feeling unmotivated, this makes you feel a little better about it. So, read those books, let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next episode.